Welcome to another edition of Chilean Football News. This is your host Daniel Campos, and with us all the way in the Netherlands is football reporter Cecilia Lagos. Cecilia, how are you? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's a pleasure.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. We last spoke a few months ago, late last year, on our podcast on Spotify, and we touched on many topics. You introduced yourself, to the show. You spoke about your work at the FIFA 2019 Women's World Cup, life in Holland, in the Netherlands, Nicolas Tagliafico, your work with TUDN, with ESPN. I mean, what else? What else in the life of reporter Cecilia Lagos?
By now, well, it's basically what you have mentioned. I am still a freelance correspondent for TUDN, which is Televisa Univision Deportes Network, but I mostly work for the United States. That's Univision Deportes. I'm also always collaborating, contributing to different media, like the Tactical Room, where I usually interview people like players and coaches and important people from the football world. And I also last week had a feature printed on The Squall, which is like a brother magazine of the Blizzard, which is a very, very respected and well-known English football magazine. So I'm always doing collaborations. I'm always contributing with different media.
Well, that's sort of, I guess, the go these days. Freelancing and working in print and digital, more digital these days, and videos. And as the world keeps tackling the COVID-19 coronavirus, there's webinars or something. I mean, we'll touch on that a little later. There's a whole world of meetings via video, via Skype, via Zoom. We have to stay home. Así que quédate en casa, stay home. Cecilia, let's start with, I guess, the latest in world football. What's making us, get up in the morning and read? What's bugging you at the moment in football?
You mean related to the quarantine, to the pandemics, or just in general?
In general. What's making us, want to know the latest? I know for me, it's the Sergio Jadue series. The latest for me is I don't know. There's so much. How Germany has tackled the virus and playing. What is UEFA going to do? Things down here in Chile. Stories about Abby Wambach and Megan Rapinoe. What's bugging you lately?
I think it's the subject and all the uprising about racism. Because this is not only something that happens in the United States, and it wasn't only sparked by George Floyd's death or assassination, better said. And it's something that has come, of course, for centuries, and it's so deeply rooted in everything, including football, even the press. And the FAs, I don't think that there's a football organism that has really been able to tackle the issue properly, especially in countries like, let's say, Italy. Italy has a terrible problem with racism, And it's also very rooted in South America, even though we make a blind side to it, but it always happens there. And there's no consequences, real consequences for the teams of those so-called fans, of those hooligans who insult and even make those players cry, even make those players feel so terrible on the pitch that they want to leave it. And it doesn't matter the consequences, they just want to leave it because they cannot take it, and they don't have to accept that. But barely the clubs sometimes take some measures, like Lazio. They try to educate their fans by bringing them, let's say, to Auschwitz when it's racism against, or when it's anti-Semitism. But I don't see anything else against, especially racism against Black players, which is the most generalized, I think, kind of racism we can see in stadiums. And I think it's time that the FAs step up and they take real measures, punishments, like they have to, let's say, take points out of that team in order to make them suffer for what they are doing, but also educate. It's not enough to say no to racism. It's not enough to say kick it out. It's not enough to say just stop it. They need to educate, but they also need to punish. They also need to make these people see that what they do has consequences, ill consequences for themselves, because probably many times they are also expelled, or their season cards are cancelled. They cannot be a season card holder anymore. But that's not enough. I mean, it's good that the clubs do something, but it's more necessary from the FAs to really tackle this. And even if it's really painful, even if the clubs take their own measures, they need to punish them, I think, with points. Points, it's by far the most painful punishment that a club can receive, or a team can receive, when their own fans or the hooligans that go to the stadium in their name, when they make racist statements, or they yell something racist at a player or whatever, which is very, very rooted. And I don't think that this is going to improve unless there is a really, really strict measure taken. Like today, the Corriere della Sera, I think it was,
Italy?
In Italy, but it's no, or il Corriere dello Sport. I think, there are two.
Corriere dello Sport. Sì.
Yeah, il Corriere dello Sport. They compared the financial situation of Roma, trying to make an analogy with the last phrase of George Floyd before dying, "I can breathe." So they compare that. I mean, it's just, how on earth can you be so tone deaf? How can you be so insensitive to just compare the financial situation of a club with this "I can breathe"?
Well, Italy's had a long history with racism, starting from Benito Mussolini and its ties to Lazio, with its fascist inclinations. Cecilia, this leads me to a question that you and I know, but for our listeners and our viewers. Cecilia, we've got on one end the institution, and on the other end the personnel, the people in the institution. So when you've got the mix between an institution where it's poisoned, you've got, for example, a government, a country, a football club, or a football association, a governing body, and then you've got the culture, and then the people. You're saying, how can we eliminate racism? And how do we get these three components, the institution, the culture, and the people, to be in line at the same time, and get rid of I just said education, get rid of racism? Because, as you say, doing campaigns and marketing trails say no to racism, is it enough? How do we get rid of it?
Yeah, of course. Neither wearing a bracelet. It's just, as you said, it's education. It's education, but I also think that along with education, you need to take measures of punishment, because otherwise it's really easy. It's really probably even players on the pitch sometimes they do so.
Oh, yeah.
We had the case recently of Cecilia, the goalkeeper of Leeds, even though he defends himself and he says that he never ever said anything, whatever, but there was an investigation and he was punished. So, and that of course is really painful. And then if you just find people who earn millions a month, if you only punish them by a fine of, I don't know, 10,000 euro or whatever, it's just, it's nothing. It's just loose change. It's petty cash for them. So it really needs to be something exemplary. It needs to be an exemplary punishment at first, because it's the only way. It's like when we are kids. If we do something wrong, then maybe our parents just do this, or they take our favorite toys away from us for a week, or they don't allow us to. Exactly. It's the only way, because this is so complicated. It's not just about talking from love and saying, okay, you have to love one another and it doesn't matter which skin color you have. No, I think the first step is to get like sanctions, real, deep, meaningful sanctions. So the next time you're going to have this outburst of stupidity, you're going to think it over, because you, in your intention to degrade someone else, you will be also punishing yourself and your own interest. It's sadly, it's not exactly the first goal that we should have, because the ideal goal is to just make people feel that it's incorrect by itself, not because you're going to get a punishment, but racism is just incorrect. It's just, it doesn't have to happen, you know. But in the meantime, while they are educated, while they are made aware, they need to be punished so they can wake up and see. I think that's the first step. And then when these things are just institutionalized and are more, how can I say it? It's more common and you get used to it, then along with education, you need to start a second phase of education, which is more even spiritual, or even it's more about self-development as a person. People need to grow from what they are now into better human beings, and that's for everyone, people and players on the pitch and people off the pitch, whether they are fans, whether they are directors, whether they are press people. Everyone needs to cooperate. Everyone needs to comply, and everyone needs to step up, because this is not acceptable anymore. It's never been acceptable, but it's been normalized and it's been dormant for too much time. It's been too long. So now it's time to just do something more strict, in my opinion. And
Yes.
it's been calling for something like that for a long time, but just clubs or FAs, especially if the FAs don't react. They are very, very, very soft on their approach to it.
Very soft. Cecilia, you're taking me to many ideas in off the top of my head. The first one is, in terms of arguments and points, will FIFA ever see a black president? Will UEFA see a black president? Will we see, people of color, of skin, who are perfectly educated and capable to take positions of power in boardrooms, in executive positions? Let's not start in England with the death of John Fashanu in the 90s. No, gay, black, a talented forward. He had everything, and he committed suicide. Rest his soul. there's so much online about Ian Wright. He's a host, what it's like to be a Caribbean English player. And as you say, rightly so, campaigns are not enough. Lazio, with its deep-rooted culture from Mussolini, they had a lot of problems with the irreducibili, se mi ricordo, sì, irreducibili, the fans, with Fabio Liverani, Mario Balotelli, who you were alluding to, issues, with Christian Cahumber, who's from New Caledonia, with the French team, Lilian Thuram.
How many times we saw Mario Balotelli crying? Do you remember?
Too
I think
many.
it was with Milan and also with the Italian team, and I think even with Brescia now.
Yes.
It's just appalling. It's appalling. It's appalling, and it has to stop. And now it's the moment. I mean, it's way overdue, but now, like, taking the impulse of the whole world movement after the assassination of George Floyd, well, this is the moment where the FAs need to do something. Step up, absolutely. Step up. That's the word. That's a concept.
If we go back home, home for me is Australia, for you it's Chile, but home in the heart is Chile. We've got cases too.
Of course.
Jean Bossejur, who's half Mapuche, half Haitian. Eduardo Ombale, who I feel very much admired as an ex-player, probably the most influential communicator in Chilean football. Again, rest his soul. He's the late Eduardo Ombale. He was very racist. He had a poor treatment of black players, especially when he was at Deportes Temuco. There have been players who have denounced his horrible language towards them. He would use horrible descriptive language in his programs, whether online on Terra or on free-to-air television back in the day when he was on La Red or on Mega. So that, as much as it goes back to education, as you say, I go back to also in Australia in the women's game, reporter Anne Odong. She's from Nigeria.
Yeah, she's my friend. Yeah, she's my friend. She was also a team reporter. Yeah.
Yes, and she went through a lot as well, and it's very sad, because football, as we all know, is an instrument for peace, for unity, and it's a political game as well, and to discriminate someone because of color or because of your, because if you're Asian, it's just unacceptable. I for one, I told you just off air, I worked in 2012 with the Australian Aboriginal program, JMF, John Moriarty Football. John Moriarty was the first Aboriginal to play for Australia, but he didn't play for Australia because there was a ban. FIFA banned Australia in the 50s. So he couldn't play, but he was selected, the first Aboriginal player to play and got the opportunity to actually be on the field was Harry Williams. And Cecilia, the realities you see there, I saw suicides up north in Borroloola. Kids of 10, 12 years old hanging themselves. Health problems of gonorrhea and syphilis, basic health problems. But you give them a ball and they're happy. And one of those girls now plays for the young Matildas in the under-17s for Australia. Shadeen Evans, she plays for Sydney FC in the W League. And I coached her when she was 10. If we do the maths now, 2020, we're getting old. But that's what brings football. And despite all the problems, and that's deeply rooted, and that's a truth that I also would like to put on this show: the institutionalized genocide of a government. Australia's an apartheid, and people don't know that reality of Australia, and we see that unfortunately in Neon, at UEFA, we see it in Zurich with FIFA. All at diplomatic level. Now, Cecilia, it's a passionate topic. We just addressed that it's institutionalized, and we can get rid of it through education and through good actions. Um, is it a topic that you know, with George Floyd, is it a topic that we can, as a football community worldwide, can we control it in the nearby future?
I think, I mean, we can. We have all the tools, every one of us. But the thing is that the ones who control it need to do it too. Because you already saw last week, there were several players in the Bundesliga who celebrated their goals with messages against racism and for Black Lives Matter and remembering George Floyd and whatever. And they were going to be punished. They were going to be sanctioned until FIFA said, okay, just go with common sense. And even then Infantino was even clearer. Instead of punishing them, we should be applauding them. So only because FIFA and Infantino spoke in their favor, Bundesliga didn't process them in order to try to punish them. So that's the problem. I think that censoring players when they try, and it's not a political issue, because players are not supposed to be political. That's another problem, in my opinion.
That's a FIFA rule.
I mean, exactly on the pitch, but this is beyond politics. I mean, of course, it's included in politics, but this is beyond politics. This is first and foremost, it's a human rights issue.
Yeah.
So if you, on top of the abuse, on top of the discrimination, on top of the racism they have to endure, you also make them shut up, you also censor them, it's a double sin in my eyes.
Yep.
So it's time that also players step up, and even on or off the pitch, whatever their status is, even if they are not the most famous or the richest of football, they need to speak up. We all need, but especially the ones who can really shake the system, the ones who are being affected, like Raheem Sterling. He's being an advocate because he's been a victim of heavy racism from the press and from fans for 2 years now, and it's being systematic, especially against him. And he's been speaking out once and again, and there's not much done after he suffers these attacks, because the FA in England, and I can see now because of their efforts to resume football, it's of course more concerned about money, and that's in general most of the FAs. But given the health situation in England, and they want to resume anyway, when there are countries doing much better, like the Netherlands, which totally canceled the season because the government said we are not going to risk our progress, like bringing more people to the stadium, even if it's behind closed doors. So, and they want to go on anyway, and they are having weekly positive results, but still they privilege money instead of health. So if you take that to the racism problem, of course, it's a limitation. It's a limitation. It's a big rock on the road, and it's difficult to just go around it all the time. It's a moment. There's a moment where, among several people or all the possible people, you need to take that big rock out of the road. Otherwise, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I feel that many of the posts and many of the declarations and many of the PR things that we are seeing from players, from celebrities and clubs and FAs, it's just PR, public relations. And I fear that this, in many cases, could be just fashion, could be just a trend that maybe in a month from now it's going to be forgotten, and we cannot allow that. That's a problem. We cannot allow this to be a trend. We cannot allow this to be fashion. It has to be a movement that leads to a change, definitely once and for all.
Yeah, here to stay. It can't be just a trend.
Exactly. And yeah, going back to your previous questions, like, yeah, we see, let's say in FIFA, Fatma Samoura, and yeah, she's the Secretary General, but we don't know. I mean, there have been, and I think there are black vice presidents, because there are so many vice presidents in FIFA.
There is diversity.
Yeah, exactly. But it all depends, of course, who goes with as a candidate and which interests are at stake, because it's not only, I mean, we can go as candidates too, but
the politics.
Of course there are so many, exactly, it's politics and it's financial interests and it's political interests. So it's basically who has the best offer, you know, for the ones who vote. And that's always complicated. But we also see the lack of diversity on the benches. How many black coaches do we see? It's like we were super surprised in Russia. Yeah, exactly. In Russia, when we saw the coach from Ghana or Senegal, I can remember it. I think it was from Senegal. He was the only black coach, the only one. So if we don't see that diversity also on the benches.
Yeah, and it has to be based on merit as well. Don't forget.
Of course.
That's also the debate. There's always people who say, "Oh, you know, we have to, you know, be diplomatic and keep the rules fair and keep a quota." No. It's just the approach to a capable, qualified football professional who happens to have a different color, a dark color, and people point the finger and start, you know, taunting. I mean, you're in the Netherlands. The Netherlands have a very, you know, for those of you who are watching and listening, the Netherlands have, you know, a colonial historic past with the Antilles and, you know, the East Indies in Indonesia and the West Indies in the Caribbean. I mean, how much
South Africa?
You know, let's just start. You know, too many. Edgar Davids, Patrick Kluivert, you know, from Suriname, from so many, Curaçao.
Exactly.
So in the coaching and the boardroom at the KNVB, there are coloured people, but you know, it goes back to education, as you say. Completely back to education. Brazil has a serious problem in racism as well.
Yeah.
We don't see many black players in coaching. That's if the player wants and desires to be coached.
Yeah, exactly.
To be a coach. If they go through the coaching path, why people in the game still pointing the finger because of the color of his skin? It's a very, very, very passionate topic, Cecilia. You also mentioned to me off air about the health issue in football and how governing bodies and governments are trying to find a balance, the yin and yang, between getting football back on the agenda. There's still matches to be played to finish a season. And all the sponsorship and TV rights and basically all the money behind that, and the most important of all, the health of human beings. This is a human issue. Cecilia, where do we start? Where do we start on this topic?
Well, it's complicated. If you tell me, I think common sense should dictate that we cancel all of the seasons and just wait and take care of each other and take care of ourselves and take care of what we have and what we have left, and start a new next season whenever that next season starts. But of course there are so many financial issues and there are so many financial interests at stake. I mean, there are players in England who already manifested their concerns and their fears about going back to the pitch and going back to play. And we are seeing every week they are testing players in the Premier League and the Championship. And yeah, there are some weeks where they complain and some other weeks where they have infected people. But what's going to happen when there are infected people and infected players or infected coaching staff or whoever inside the pitch when they resume the season? What's going to happen then? Are you going to suspend the games and then make those teams play later as if we had time to do that? I think it's very complicated. It's a risk. So far, Germany has managed very well because the situation in their country has been managed very well. And of course, they have lowered the risk, not only for players and for sports, or football in this case, but for the entire population. Because they managed the situation as a country and as a government very well since the beginning, and they have the resources too. But England, on the other hand, has been the opposite, absolutely the opposite, with one of the worst, if not the worst, management of the crisis in Europe, and along with Sweden, probably, in the name of herd immunity. And now they have this chaos in their healthcare system, and so many people suffering, and so many people, and also prolonging and lengthening the suffering, because the more infected people you have, and the more mismanagement of the crisis you have, of course you prolong the crisis, because you get more and more infected people and more sick people and more deaths and so on. So and still France canceled their season, the Netherlands canceled their season, and England is going ahead. So the only answer for that is of course is money. And then
contracts
through that,
right?
Exactly, and through that you can see how dehumanized football is. To me, that's the first problem that football has. Ever since football became or transitioned from sport to industry, it's been highly and profoundly dehumanized. And money, it's all it counts. Fame, it's all it counts. Material goods, it's all it counts. Results, it's all it counts. And then at the cost of, players' lives, or health and mental health too, and so many other things.
It brings a heavy consequence and a chain reaction as well, as you're explaining. You know that we'll get to the women's game. You know that Southeast Asia is the biggest continent in the world in terms of population, and it's the number one continent in the world that watches the English Premier League, that pay for subscription and watch the Premier League. So as an independent body, the EPL has that pressure to cover its expenditure, but at what human cost? I'm not going to quote Antonio Gramsci, the philosopher, but he did say, along the lines that there is no such thing as different races. There's only one race, and that's the human one. Cecilia, the women's game. Let's touch on.
Let me just give some nuance to that quote of Gramsci, because
yes, please.
Yeah, of course, we are first and foremost humans, but the beauty is to acknowledge our differences and just play along with that.
Celebrate that.
Exactly. We are not the same, but we have the same rights. That's the point. It's the same that I argue about gender equality. It's like people tend to say that we need to be equal, like we are exactly the same, men and women. But it's not. We are super different. Of course, we are men or women, or different genders in between, but we are not the same, but we have the same rights.
Yes.
That's the point, and we need to embrace and respect our cultures. That's the thing.
3 issues, Cecilia, with what you're saying: equality, equity, and equality. All different. They're all different, and we've all seen that picture on the baseball, on the baseball diamond, and there's a fence. I'll bring it to our audience, and it's a cartoon, and the children are looking over the fence, and some of the children are taller, the other children are shorter, and they want to be able to watch the baseball match over the fence, but they can't. So that's equality. That's not equality, because the level of the base where the kids are standing from, I'll show you the picture, I'm sure you've seen it. That's equality. No one has the same start. Everyone has different stories in their lives and different situations, and some people call them privileges, but no one has the same equal footing. So it can't be equal. It has to be egalitarian and has to be equitable. So moving on to the women's game, yes, very sad that in the US, US soccer did not, in the courts, decide that the pay would be equal in the women's game. It's shocking, but there's the topic of equality. Cecilia, I'm going to just start with a very quick question, and you can dominate the rest of the topic. Why aren't there enough female representation at boardroom level in the US, and also again in FIFA, or at least in CONCACAF, because this was decided in the courts, and Megan Rapinoe, Abby Wambach, etc., Kristen Press, they've all been very, very hurt. Not just individually. I mean, they're fine with their contracts and endorsements, but as a whole, as a football family, it's topic for discrimination. Cecilia, why is women's football progressing 5 steps forward and then going, another step backwards? Why is this still happening, and we're in 2020?
Because men are still dominant in the management of women's football.
That's the answer. Thank you. I'm a male, but I'm able to separate those things. Thank you, Cecilia.
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, if a short answer is that, then why? And it's still, the same I could tell you about sports journalism. It's exactly the same. We're still a long way to go, with baby steps in progress, but still not enough. And that's a problem, because the ones who make the decisions in women's football, as well as sports journalism, are all or mostly men. So we need more women in women's football management. Now, how can we get to that?
How do we get rid of the Club de Todos?
Yeah. Well, it's so complicated. It's like they're in the Chilean FA, the INFP. I know someone who was.
By the way, should be split.
Yeah, exactly. First of all. But beyond that, I met this highly capable woman who is tremendously capable, and she got the highest education in football and sports management in Europe.
By the name of?
No, I'm not going to mention her, because okay. I'm not going to, and she even got to the women leadership program in FIFA and everything. She was at the highest level of this education, exactly. And when she went back to the Chilean FA, they closed the doors for her, because she was well too educated and well too ready and capable to just do the things that should be done,
So the male domination in
but
the
it's not only
governing body was
exactly.
feeling threatened by this highly educated woman.
Beware, not only men, sometimes it's also women.
Yeah.
So
there's
women
jealousy,
and men.
envy.
In this case, there was also a woman who felt threatened and also closed the doors for this person who had invested money and invested time to try to better herself and try to educate herself and try to be better prepared in order to try to be a contribution to the very underdeveloped women's football in Chile. And when she said, well, I'm ready, look at what I did. I got this degree and in Europe, I went to this program in FIFA. No, you know what? And she was left out. So yeah, there's a problem of culture. There's a problem of insecurity many times, maybe most of the times, especially with men. But as I said, there are also women who react like that because they also feel threatened if they are not equally prepared. And it's what we call chaqueteo. It's what we call chaqueteo.
Chaqueteo, amiguismo, friendship.
Pitutos.
Pituto, mates rates, favors, instead of being transparent and putting a job ad and recruiting, in human resources, doing a transparent recruitment drive.
Exactly. So it's a sort of a micro corruption also.
Micro corruption. It happens in the African Confederation, it happens in the Asian Confederation, it happens in CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, UEFA. How do we, I call it pest control. You get rid of the pests, you have to fumigate.
But how? That's the problem, because someone has to speak up and someone has to speak and call out these people. That's the problem. And you need to be really, really brave and you need to feel ready. That's why I didn't mention the name of this person, because it's like, it's like if there's anyone who's going to accuse, it has to be the one who was affected. So, but that's only a little example. It's like every time in countries like Chile, especially in Chile, when you are well prepared and when you have gone beyond the average and you want to step up and just better yourself, and you believe that doing that you're going to get better opportunities, and it doesn't happen, it's just disheartening. Even the opposite. Instead of getting more opportunities, doors close for you because you are seen as a threat.
And you start looking at other options, and if you only have one passport, your doors are limited. So
exactly,
you've prepared yourself. You don't have a second or third passport to find other doors. I mean,
well, in my case, I don't have a second passport either. But anyway, I just left the country.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. But the thing is that there's still a huge problem regarding the way women are seen when they are powerful in their spirit and their attitude. Like I interviewed exactly for a year ago, right before the Women's World Cup, I interviewed Vera Pau. Vera Pau is just as big as a name as you can find in women's football. She's one of the pioneers. She's one of the most successful coaches and educators in women's football. She wasn't world champion or anything yet, but she created a whole method to train and to create, and to educate women's youth, to develop them here in the Netherlands. And you could see the results now back in 2017 and last year. You see, I mean, that's a product of something that she created along with some other people 20 years ago. So she's an authority, and she spent like several months or maybe a year without a job after she quit her job in Houston. But she, of course, she was called, and she told me that she was called by headhunters, or she used a headhunter to try to land a new job. And she got the call of some very, very important and high FAs, and you know, some of the best national teams in the world. And finally, the job went to men. And when the headhunter got those answers, those no's, then he would say back to her, you know, I don't understand. You have the qualifications, you have the experience, you are who you are, and still they say no, because she is not easy to tame. She's not, how can you say, malleable? Maybe
moldable.
Moldable, exactly. She's not going to be a yes woman.
Because
she's not going to say, she's going to try to impose her views and her experience, because she knows what works and what doesn't.
Yep, she's
and
tough
that's
as a
the
rock.
thing.
She's,
exactly. But of course, if you are a woman with such a character and with such an experience, of course you are seen as a tough, difficult woman, so we better don't deal with her, because she won't obey us. And she told me that. And that's only one of the many problems that she, and imagine, she's one of the most important coaches and women's football people in the world. Just imagine what's left for the rest.
Well,
you see? So
I'd like
only
to
that's a start.
I'd like to add a little bit on my experience in my 2 years in the women's game in Australia at the top level. There's two very key observations. One, if you're a male coach, you need to do exactly what you need to do in the men's game, in the male, side of things. The tactics. I mean, you do your training from Monday to Friday. The technical, the physical, the tactical, the psychological. But on match day, as a coach, it's best not to be in the dressing room. Just let the women be women and give the instructions, and that's it. Let the team of female players coach themselves or instruct themselves on game day, because, and this is simple, women are more emotional. That's it. Women are more intuitive. You can't, as a football coach, as a male coach, in the dressing room at halftime, you're 2-0 down, start screaming and insulting and make that, in the old school manner, a way of motivation for your players. And then in the second half, the game changes because your players are motivated after being, completely screamed at and F-bombs everywhere. With women, it doesn't work. If you're 2-0 down as a male coach in a women's team, it's best not to even say anything, or just leave the instructions written, because women are more intuitive and they'll find a way to get back into the game. You can't coach the same way in the men's, in the women, and it's all relative to every team. It's all relative.
But I would like to point out the thing you said about women being more emotional. It is seen as such, but what I think is that men have been educated to repress their emotions ever since they are born. So, and a man is supposed to be tough and manly because they don't show their emotions when they are hurt. Or I don't know if that's changing with the new generations, but of course they are supposed to be insulted and screamed at and maybe have the hair dryer.
Yeah, and
pointed at them sometimes.
It's viewed as acceptable.
Exactly. And of course, with women, that doesn't really work unless you are brought up in that tough way. Which is, but we are allowed, but we are allowed to be more free and to express our emotions also. And I think that is why also it's easier in women's football to just be free about your sexual orientation.
Thank you about that.
Because I think it's my feeling, but
no, you're right. You're
men
wrong.
has to do. No. I think that men has to do. Men's football have to do work. Well, not only about the sexual orientation. That's another, maybe for another show. But
yeah, I expressed the wrong word.
Yeah, of course. But the thing, no, it's okay. But the thing is that men have to be equally emotional. The thing is that they just repress it because it's not well seen. It's not in their best interest, according to the social norm, to express your emotions, let alone inside a locker room with so much testosterone running around, where the most important thing is the girlfriend who's a model and the super expensive car, and yeah, exactly, and the toughness of your. So that's something that has to change too, because I think that's taken a toll also on men and on men's players in the way they are seen, because then you learn years later about the mental health issues they had because they had to be in a way that maybe they didn't want to be, or things like that. And I think it's time for men also to show their emotions and not just also label in a negative way this emotional capability that women have in order to be more free to show their.
It's a stereotype. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a stereotype. It's a stereotype. Yeah.
One by one. Now, it leads to the next topic of LGBTI. Huge topic, very big in football. There is nothing wrong with a male player coming out of the closet, but of course, to this day in world football, a player risks losing contracts and sponsorship, and the taboo and the stereotype of that football players have to be straight. There have been male players coming out and declaring their sexuality or their sexual orientation. There's nothing wrong with it. It needs to be respected, just like the color of your skin. And in the women's game, it's much more common, it's very good to see that there is less backlash. But then there's a mix of everything else. Again, going back to what we spoke about at FIFA, there's the race to get to Zurich, there's a race to get to Neon and get to positions of power. We can see some very successful women in the women's game as players or former players or as executive directors, and they're very proud to be in the LGBTI community. And as the old saying goes, they're loud and proud. I'd like them to be even louder and even more prouder, because that's who they are, and that's how the game is composed of human beings. We've got Santiago Morning here in Chile that's big on identity. We see this in the US, we see this in Holland. I've seen it in Australia. Please,
I think that
your experiences.
What Santiago Morning is doing, considering the resources they have and the environment they are in, I think it's exemplary. It's really good. They are the club to follow in women's football, and also in terms of respect, and in terms of leadership in all these topics, I think.
Well, it's a touchy topic anyway.
Yeah, of course. Especially in a society as a Chilean one, which is so
backwards.
Exactly, backwards, but also hypocrite.
Conservative.
Yeah, it's still conservative. It's 2020, and it's still quite a conservative. I mean, they post things on Instagram, and you believe, or they make you believe that they are open-minded, and still not. There's still so much prejudice and hate, and it's terrible. Exactly, it's politicized too. It's so underdeveloped. Well, everything is a reflection of the state of society. What we see on the pitch, what we see on the news, what we see everywhere is a reflection of the society. So when you try to break those patterns, of course you make noise, you shake the foundations, and it's complicated. But so far, I think what the work of Santiago Morning, even with very limited resources and with a lot of risk in terms of backlash, I think it's been wonderful, and they are leading the way. So it's like, I really think it's really good, especially also not only because of the equality treatment in order to respect sexual orientation or gender, but also what they did, professionalizing their roster, or a part of the roster. I mean, they cannot sadly make a contract for the whole roster, but they did, and they offered contracts even for members of the national team who left Spain to go back to play for them. So I think that they must be doing something good, and they are, definitely they are. But there's still again a long way to go, and the men's football should take at least some of that progress from women's football. And you see interviews like, it was Tony Kroos, I think, Tony Kroos a couple of days ago, he was asked, I think in GQ Spain, about why don't we see homosexuals naturally and freely coming out in men's football. And of course, as a German, open-minded, he said, no, well, that shouldn't be a problem, and we should be free to just express our orientation freely. But at the same time, that's something that I wouldn't advise for a homosexual player, because things are said on the pitch and things are said from the fans, from the stands. So it's complicated. It's not just about coming out, but how you deal with the consequences of coming out. That can really take a toll. So on one hand, you say, I remember Beckham also, and some other players have said, oh yeah, I mean, totally in favor of having, colleagues and teammates coming out, and there's no problem in the locker room or whatever. So they say. But then there's the but. But I wouldn't advise them to do, but it's difficult, but this. So there you see there's a resistance. And just imagine, I mean, it's 2020 and we still don't see an openly gay male footballer in activity. And we haven't. We sometimes suspect, we sometimes think because of this, because of the stereotypes, but to be honest, no one dares. And even after retirement, there are just very, very few male footballers who dare to reveal their sexual orientation. So I think that's such a big problem, and I can't imagine the ordeal they must experience, because it's just a matter of statistics. There must be, in the highest level of competition as well as the lower levels, but at the highest level of competition, which has the most visibility, there has to be, because of the statistics, gay footballers, and they can't come out. And I can't imagine the ordeal they must go through internally, emotionally, mentally, how fearful lives they must live and lead, because they cannot be free about who they love or who they have sex with, which is absolutely normal. It's just because also there's the stereotype of the successful footballer who has this model-like wife or model-like girlfriend, and who has the big car and the big house, and he has to have the family and the kids. But as soon as they don't meet those requirements or those stereotypes, people start talking, or it's just disgraceful.
Well, for the record, earlier in this episode, we mentioned John Fashanu. There's so many documentaries. Please use YouTube, everybody, use the time in this lockdown due to COVID-19. Watch the documentaries. There are so many movies and documentaries, educational documentaries on football. John Fashanu was an immense talent, goal scorer in the old English First Division and in the English Premier League. And he suffered too much embarrassment, shame, and backlash for his own orientation and for his own identity, and sadly took his life. I can think of an Australian player in the second division in the NPL, the National Premier League. He's native from the Apple Island of Tasmania, Andy Brennan. He came out and his teammates said, you know, we support him all the way. That's very brave of him, and he's just another player in the team. Yeah, so there's
that's how it should be.
That's how it should be.
And there was also last year, or in the beginning of this year, I think it was last year, because we still had football going on, and there is this goalkeeper in Argentina, but he plays for an amateur club, and he came out too, and that was because of social media, even when it's an amateur club, and of course he's not as famous or rich or well known as, let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to exaggerate, like Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever, but of course because of social media he had this impact, and he started having, the press on him, and he had all these features and these interviews, and how he hasn't regretted at all. Of course he received, sadly, because it's a very male chauvinist society in Argentina too. But yeah, it's an amateur club, it's an amateur environment, it's something different. So, but still, I would love to see like a big football star coming out, and because that the day that happens, and I'm sure that we are not too many years away from that. Hopefully, the day that happens, the doors will open, and so many others will follow. Hopefully, but we need someone big, like a big name, to do it, to change. Because do you think, let's say, someone as big as Ronaldo or Messi or Zlatan, with that amount of popularity, sponsors, and media interest and visibility, if anyone like them comes out, do you think that the sponsors are going to pull out? Of course not, because that's going to go against them. So it needs to be someone who is really, really well, how can I say, it has built his ground, and it has already a big, huge popularity, and it has the power to just say, I'm gay,
to be able
the rest can follow,
to resonate and represent. Yes. Now we're about to finish this fantastic episode, Cecilia. Pregnancy in the women's game. I'm big on diversity. I'm big on all these topics in sport. Animal cruelty in sport. LGBTI in sport, etc. I love these topics to talk about. Yes, it is mind-blowing. It is an invitation for everyone to think. I like thought provocation. I like to open debate. You like this as well, Cecilia. This is why we get along. There's going to be some other people on the show as well for Chilean Football News. A lot of people that you've met as well in France, and you've met in other places around the world. Pregnancy in women's football. At the moment, there's a high-profile player in the US who just became a mother. Fill us in, Cecilia. All yours.
Oh yeah, of course. Alex Morgan, and I think I saw an Instagram post today or yesterday that her baby is already 1 month old, and well, thank goodness for her. Baby. Yeah, exactly. It's very good for her that she was born, during this crisis, because she will have all the time to just recover and to just live her motherhood without any pressure at all. And, although I think there are plans to resume the season later in for women's football in the US. But anyway, it's just normal. I mean, what you want me to say? Women get pregnant if they want sometimes, sometimes not. But
I mean, unplanned.
Yeah. Sometimes are planned, sometimes are not.
Which is fine.
Yeah, but women get pregnant. Deal with it. Women get periods. Deal with it.
That's right.
It's just our body. Otherwise, we'll be mutilating us. It's just deal with it. It's just big part of the discrimination we suffer, and not only in football. It's just, you see in Chile, pregnant women or women who, or many other countries, they don't get hired. I mean, they are still asked very uncomfortable and personal questions at job interviews. Do you plan to get pregnant? How many kids do you have? Do you want to have more kids? It's like, in order to know if they are going to count on them if they get pregnant or not. Otherwise, they just fire them as soon as they can, which is, while it's still not illegal, or they straightforward, they don't hire them. And that's, I mean, what do you want to do? I mean, it's women's bodies. It's the normal thing, so. And everyone has their own right to create a family if they want to. If Alex Morgan wanted to get pregnant, or even if it was a surprise, and so many others like her, it's just
so
deal with it. Deal with it.
Right.
So
that's the
pregnancy in women's, of course, it's the same as periods. Thank goodness now there are clubs like Chelsea who are planning their trainings, and because we have a cycle, and our bodies and our energy, exactly, and our bodies, our energy, our capabilities, and many things just fluctuate in order to be functional, because of this cycle. So they started to include this methodology and these medical studies to plan their trainings according to the cycles of every player.
Yep.
And that's the right thing to do.
That's the right thing to do.
That's the right thing to do, because it's women's bodies, and that's it. It's deal with it. So, okay, you want to have a family. You're the proud macho who's proud of his family and his wife, of course. So you think that women are only incubators? Of course not.
No.
So it's like women. I mean, men sometimes they like to be show off their families and show off their children. Okay, but how do you get those children? I mean, hopefully and normally, most of the times it's through your wife getting pregnant. So deal with it. Why can your wife get pregnant and give you children, and not allow a female footballer to do the same if she wants?
Yep, and as you rightly explain, there's no problems for a national federation with the use of technology to on the phone create an app where players can follow and enter data of especially in the women's game of their menstrual cycle, and design a training program around that. The challenges for Alex Morgan is not only to enjoy motherhood and have a baby, but also maintain her fitness level, go through the whole transition, the change of her hormones, her body, her thoughts, everything. She's going through all those changes, beautiful changes that a woman goes through, and get back onto the training pitch, obviously, when COVID-19 gets controlled and settled, and continue her playing career.
Exactly, and she was already training until the 6th the 6th month of her pregnancy or so, and we saw videos of her like shooting at the goal and doing wonderful moves and with belly this big, and you know, it's just possible. It's not
Beautiful.
yeah, exactly. It's not a handicap. It's not that we get pregnant and we are crippled. Of course not. It's just, you know, it's 9 months and we deliver a baby and then we can get back to normal. But we need time.
It needs time and
respect for that time.
Yeah. Well, Cecilia, there's so much that we can continue talking on. We will have you back on Chilean football news. Let's talk season. I can't thank you enough for your time. Muchísimas gracias. You know, I mean, there's so much more that we talk off air, you know, in the game. But Cecilia, is there anything else that you want to finish off?
Well, it was a very dense show, I think, but it's not in a negative way. But I think we approached some very uncomfortable topics, because the things we have talked about are things that usually people and press and discussion panels try to avoid. And even if they go around those topics, they are not really deep, because, you know, I think people and colleagues, and they are afraid. We have this wonderful blessing of technology, which allows us to be free. And you know, I don't have any allegiance and I don't have any contract issues with anyone, or just I can be as free exactly to be. And it's the way I am also. I couldn't be that, you know, I cannot talk this because no, I need to be free, and I'm very glad. And I know that there's a price to pay also when you're a woman who speaks out. But I'm glad that we had this space, and maybe someone will listen to us and will say, wow, okay, so maybe it sparks a change in someone. And if we spark a change or provoking thoughts in one person, you know, we are already doing our jobs, I think.
Well, Cecilia,
so thank you very much. Thank you very much for your
most
invitation.
welcome. This is why I have this season, Let's Talk. This is why I have Chilean football news in English. This is why I do this, because I want voices to be heard. I want to help people in football. I want to help the game. I want to help bridge the gap of English education and language in Chile, in South America, throughout the world. I want the world to hear about women's football. I want the world to hear about Chilean football. I want the world to hear about Latino football and Hispanic identity and football in general. Talk about anything football. And this is the space why I've done this, because I know, and I've seen it and I've lived through it, and I know that there are very intelligent people out there like yourself, people who want to follow their vocation, and I'm here to help.
Yeah, especially because football, it's so much more than the ball, so much more than the la pelotita. You know, merely what we see on the pitch is a reflection of everything else happening off the pitch. So football, it's way much more than a result, and way much more than a system and a playing plan, whatever, a game plan. So I think it's important for me to humanize, to rehumanize football, because that's something that has been lost. And the only way to better football and to maybe go back to the essence of it is it's putting humans at the center of it, not the player, not the star, but the human being who is there. So that's also a bit of my mission in this part of my life and my career.
Brilliant, Cecilia Lagos, resonating. Eduardo Galeano, dime cómo juegas y te diré quién eres. Tell me how you play the ball and I will tell you who you are. It's beautiful.
Exactly. In order to understand what happens on the pitch, we need to understand what happens off the pitch.
Amen, Cecilia. Thank you very much. Don't forget to follow Chilean Football News on Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. That's all for now. And yeah, in the name of football, take care, stay home.